education, training and mentoring in management, administration and governance. My name is Andre Chewson. I'm from Pro Sport International and I'll be your presenter this evening. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things. If everyone could ensure that they stay on mute, or if they have a question, you can either choose to raise your hand or you can put that in the chat, and we'll certainly look at that towards the end of the webinar today. And that, apart from that, welcome along, and I hope that this provides a little bit of support and helps to grow and develop and make your particular organisation a lot stronger and more sustainable. So just to follow up from our first webinar, which was basically around the role of the QWWF, its relationship with WWF, the national governing organisation, and also how that relationship works from WWF down through the state level organisations, which is QWWF, down into the divisions, the regions and into the clubs. And as explained last week, this particular project and the delivery of this has been supported through the Department of Tourism, Innovation and Sport through their Active Industry Project Fund, and we thank the government for their support in this, and we hope that those of you who are using this particular webinar are able to gain some knowledge and some I guess support in how you're running your particular organisation. Now, tonight we're going to focus in on management within your organisation, and so basically there are three modules: management, administration and governance. Each is very important in its own particular role and as an individual component, but together they help to make up an efficient and well-run organisation. So one of the things we're going to talk about first. Okay. All right, now we're back in business. And so one of the first items that I wanted to talk about was the relationship of sport versus business. In this day and age, unfortunately, running a sporting club is very much running a business, a small business, and in some cases a very large business. And so it's important that people understand that when decisions are made in an organisation, quite often the emotion and the I guess the atmosphere of the decision need to be put aside, and that decisions need to be made on a business strategy. And so as we equate sport versus business, so we should be looking at how our various roles are represented across a business. And therefore, when you're starting to look at people who best fit positions within your particular organisation, start to equate it to being more of a business-run organisations, and therefore something that looking for somebody that has the skills required. For instance, as a new treasurer, someone who has some type of accountancy background, maybe a bookkeeper or someone who deals with the finances within a business and that type of thing. Obviously, a president, someone who's well versed in the roles of being a CEO or a manager or a foreman, able to delegate, able to lead, able to bring people together, that type of thing. So it is important that within the changing face of sporting organisations these days, that we do start to think of our particular club as a small business that needs to be run like a business, even though at the end of the day, the business is about having a great time, being involved in whether it's tournament water ski or it's wakeboard or it's barefoot or it's disabled. You know, at the end of the day, it's not about trying to take away the fun and the enjoyment of what the activity is. It's more about ensuring that that activity and that enjoyment is held within a safe and secure environment, that, you know, the risk of injury has been minimised, that you know, the club is financially able to provide the services that it should provide. So while there'll always be emotion within sport, because that's the beauty of sport, when it comes to the actual management of an organisation, if clubs are able to take, I guess, a little bit more of a business style approach to how they're managing their business, and as we move further into this particular webinar, you'll see that there are some tools there that are very specific to trying to manage a business, but obviously are related to the sport. So management, administration and governance within the volunteer environment. So these are the three modules. So tonight we'll be talking about management, which is basically management. It's the leading, the planning, organising, directing, the budgeting, reviewing and evaluating operations of your organisation. So that's all operations of your organisation. So that's from what happens out on the water to, you know, how the canteen is working. You know, like quite often clubs are hosting an event, yet don't do a stock take before the event and don't do a stock take after the event, because obviously you want to make sure that everything balances out properly. And so, you know, if there are, I guess, I won't use the word free because it's a little derogatory. I would rather use the complimentary drinks handed out for volunteers as a reward for you know, their services. They should be accounted for, because at the end of the day, if you're running a business, it's an operational expense. So as you're running the club, again, it's an operational expense because you've had to purchase it from somewhere. And the same goes for whether you choose to have some type of event to thank all of your volunteers, or whether it's your Christmas party. It's important that, once again, beforehand and after, doing your due diligence on your stock and your checking and everything else like that. Okay. We'll quickly whip through these, which is admin, which will be next week, which is your day-to-day process of running your organisation. And then our final webinar, which will seal off for this year, will be the system by which you are structured, sustained and regulated. And I'm not going to dive in too deep about those two, apart from to say, join us next week and the week after, and we'll get into those in a little bit more detail. Okay, so as I said, my name's Andre Chewson, and my company is Pro Sport International, and we have actually engaged with QWWF to present this particular webinar series. This also follows up on the road shows that we've been doing. So basically starting off in Cairns, Townsville, Mackay, unfortunately not in Rocky, and then down into Brisbane, where we have presented these particular forums for the volunteers out there. So I'll just quickly run through some of the organisations that Pro Sport has worked with, and that I have a relationship with in the past. And we'll get into our layout area of focus. Okay, so management, admin and governance within the volunteer environment. supporting volunteers with within organisations through education, training and mentoring. So I came across this and I thought this was a fantastic way to sort of lighten up the mood. But if you're thinking about that and going, I wonder if that's ever happened in our meetings, probably guaranteed it. Somewhere along the line, something's happened like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, denial is not a reasonable or acceptable reason. So one of the reasons that we're doing this is so that we can educate and we can provide more resources out there for you as a volunteer when you're involved in your management of your organisation, so that you are taking all of the necessary steps to ensure that you're safeguarding your club and that you're leaving it in safe hands for those coming into the various positions after you. So previous to the actual face-to-face presentations, we actually went out and surveyed the membership and we got quite a good response. And some of the responses we got raised some definite red flags and some areas of concern. So just in having a look at this, obviously, which of the following options most closely aligns with your agenda? In saying that, it was quite a good response across both female and male respondents. In a typical week, across the organisations for which you volunteer, about how many hours would you volunteer? Let me categorise this by saying this would be in regards to how many hours you volunteer within you, if you had a particular role. Because one of the things that we're trying to work on is trying to lessen the load on volunteers. You know, the old story about, you know, we've got a membership of 300, but we've only got 3 who actually do some work in the club. So what we want to try and do is create a system where more people are involved in the club, in your organisation. And so the ideal scenario is volunteers are doing about 2 hours a week within their defined role. Now, what that might mean is if you're the president, you may not do a lot of work for, say, 2, maybe 3 months when things are quiet, but during the peak season, it may amp up. You know, you're running some events and you might be putting in 4 to 6 hours a week in your role as president. That's not to say that in your role as president, you're also a boat driver, you're also a champion on the barbecue. You might be a fantastic person who goes around and meets and greets. And, you know, you might be someone who's really good at selling raffle tickets, who knows? But those are particular activities above and beyond the role that you actually take within the organisation. So what we're looking to try and establish is that through good management, the volunteers within your particular organisation are doing that around 2 hours per week, based over a year, and based on just their particular role. Now, in regards to those who responded, one of the areas of concern is in regards to the age of the respondents. So we didn't get anything in the 18 to 24, 25 to 34 was low. So obviously we can see there that the majority of the respondents were in the older age group, which can say a lot of things. Generally, you can take out of that it looks like it is people who have developed very good life skills, are probably well settled where they are now. Children are growing up, involved in the sport. They're back involved in the sport and looking to help out. So one of the things that we're looking at moving forward is how can we try to encourage more of that younger age group to become active volunteers. And when I mean active, I mean volunteers who are actually involved in management committee positions per se, not you know, the young ones who like to you know, just help out around where they can. So some of the things that are there for them to take on in actual management roles once they reach 18. So one of the survey questions was, in what volunteering role would you commit the most time? And the interesting response was that 62% spent most of their time in management, admin, and governance. And that covers a very broad band, from being the treasurer to, you know, the banking, general operations of the club, dealing with red and green tape. We had numerous responses on that, but the clear indication is the majority of people's volunteering time is spent in management, admin, and governance. So if we're doing that, then the survey asked, do we have detailed position descriptions of the volunteer roles within your organisations? It wasn't too bad in regards to the responses, so we do know that there's something out there, but still over 50% don't have. Has your organisation an active volunteer recruitment program in place to fill the various management and other roles? No, in fact, over 80% of the survey responders said that there's no active volunteer recruitment program. So how do we get the next batch of volunteers on board? How do we go about doing that? Now, remember, we're talking about sustainability within our organisation and managing it. So we need to be able to find new volunteers, and there are many different ways in doing it. And we'll discuss some of those, but we're not going to be taking a huge deep dive down into volunteering within itself, because that is a completely separate subject. Are you aware of any succession planning for volunteer role changeovers? And once again, over 80%. So if you can now see where I was coming from in regards to sport versus business, if you're running a business and your CEO is leaving, then the good businesses always have someone in there who's managing the transition over. So the CEO never leaves until the next one is already comfortable and operating. Same as people coming into a new business, you know, whether it's a tradie coming in to be a fitter and turner, he's always taken through an induction program and things like that. So succession planning, making sure that there are resources out there to fill holes. Does your organisation provide any formal training and or education for volunteers in management, governance or administration? Once again, there seems to be a lot of emphasis placed on, you know, coaching, training, accreditations and those sort of things. And don't get me wrong, very important areas of clubs operations. But there doesn't seem to be any type of formal training and or education for those who come onto your committees. So some of the things that we're hoping that will challenge you as you move forward is, how do we as an organisation start to invest into our volunteers who are taking on these roles in our committees, or whether they're managing our canteen, or whether they're you know, managing our booking schedule, whatever it might be. How can we provide them with some training, some education to make their adaptation into the role a lot easier? And that, so if we can change some of those survey responses around, then hopefully we will have a better managed organisation moving forward. So management's broken down into a number of key areas. I'm not saying these are all of the areas. what I'm saying is these are the sort of areas that we've looked at and through discussion have put these out so that these are here to trigger your thoughts and to get you discussing about how you believe some of these things can possibly be advantageous for your club. And of course, the first one that we're going to have a look at is strategic planning. So I could always ask the question, does everyone know what a strategic plan is? Does your club have a current strategic plan? However, having done some background research, I'm aware that the QWWF has their strategic plan, which obviously they need to have because that's how they are able to source ongoing funding through DTIS. And for those of you who may be interested in having a look at it, it is on the QWWF website, which is qwwf.com.au. Certainly go and have a look at it. It might prove some interesting reading about some of the thoughts and strategies about where they would like the sport to move over the next 3 years. The next one, obviously, are meetings. So organisations that are running effective meetings. Effective meetings means that things are getting done, that they're not onerous on those who are attending them, so therefore they're time advantageous rather than time poor meetings, and that everyone within the meetings is able to express an opinion, and that the meetings are very inclusive of everyone attending. Succession planning, obviously, how organisations link their incoming new management committee members or whoever it might be, whether it's the new groundsman coming on board. How does the club sort of factor that in, and how does the club welcome that new person and transition from the old to the new? Financial stability, obviously management covers over on that. And of course, if you're not a financially stable organisation, then you're not really going to be operating. So we're going to touch base on that one as well. Risk management, and this will be both internal and external to your organisation. So when we're talking about internal, we're talking about risk management policies, procedures, those types of things. When we're talking about external, we're talking about rules and regulations, whether that's on the water, on the land, whatever it might be, but they are externally visible things. And then we're talking about volunteer roles and position descriptions. So once again, we knew that quite a number of clubs had volunteer roles and position descriptions, but we're going to talk about what makes a position description and the type of person that you're looking for, rather than, you know, the president shall, you know, chair all meetings. It's pretty old standard sort of thing. What we want to look at is being a little bit more dynamic about, well, the role of the president shall be to lead the club, you know. And so, and the person that we're looking for is someone who is capable of speaking on behalf of the club. So those types of things. And the last one will be about how the organisations are managing your events and obviously your membership. So we'll quickly step into our first one, which is strategic planning. So as I mentioned before, it's probably, well, QWWF has a strategic plan in place, and it's the base document over which they plan and deliver on their strategies, their goals and their objectives across the three divisions of tournament, wakeboard and barefoot. So a well-developed strategic plan provides everyone with the vision, the mission and the values of an organisation, along with a broad outlook on the objectives and goals to be achieved. So when we're talking about strategic plans, we're talking about where an organisation wants to go. Where do the members see themselves, not necessarily within the life plan span of the plan, which might only be 3 to 5 years, but where do they see themselves in 10 to 20 years time? So strategic planning. And there are a lot of areas now that are coming in that will impact on the way you run your organisation these days. Obviously, the transition to being cleaner, greener, and so the transfer across to electric powered boats, hybrid boats, or I'm not really too certain about how you do it, but those types of things, so that your carbon footprint is lessened, about usage on land and how you're managing that. So all of those types of things in 10 to 20 years, the whole landscape can be looking completely different to what it is today. And if you look back 20 years, it's certainly different from what it was 20 years ago. So strategic planning is very important because it gives you a long-term view of where you think you're going to be headed, but it's also about a short and a medium-term objectives to be reached. So short-term, strategically, where are we at with our infrastructure? What are our priorities? What do we need to achieve across our admin? Where are we sitting in our governance? Do we have proper policies and procedures in place? Planning to implement various things, and that. So basically, strategic planning is it's basically a reference guide, and it aligns you to your aims and objectives. So basically, to give you a bit of an idea, and as I read this out, is a strategic plan is a document created by the stakeholders, which is the members, but it's also others. It could be sponsors, could be your state organisation, your national organisation, they're stakeholders. So sometimes, if you're looking at doing strategic planning, it's always a good idea to seek some input from those organisations as well. It's used to communicate to the membership, general community, government and other interested parties the developed organisation goals and objectives over a period of time. And it's achieved through setting out clear direction underpinned with strategic actions. So a strategic plan will provide forward direction over an agreed period of time for the organisation management to attempt to achieve the agreed outcomes as developed during these planning forums. So in essence, a strategic plan will seek to prioritise goals and objectives, allocate resources more efficiently, identify what the club is able to offer potential new members, maintain and improve facilities, engage in active marketing and promotion, establish accountability. So you can see there how important it is for an organisation to have some form of strategic plan, or and I'm not talking about a 10-page document that just weighs people down. I'm talking about something that provides a very clear guide forward about who you are, what you do, how you do it, and what you represent, and as well what your values are. And if you're able to articulate that and put that into a document, then incoming committees will thank you because they will have something that they can work with moving forward. Our next one that we're going to talk about are meetings. And meetings. Effective meetings will ensure that the club is operating smoothly and efficiently with strong accountability across all areas of operation. And I could always ask the question about who's been in a meeting where suddenly the meeting's got off track. You've got 2 over there having a discussion, 3 over there having a discussion about something completely different, somebody checking their phone and totally oblivious to everything coming along, and you're just sitting there totally frustrated. So effective meetings. Effective meetings are meetings that have agendas, and those agendas are sent out early. Effective meetings are meetings where reports are presented, discussed, approved. Effective meetings are where everyone is allowed a voice, but it is not a forum for people to then grandstand or push an agenda. It is about dealing with the issue in front quickly and efficiently and moving to the next piece of business on your meeting agenda. Effective meetings are meetings where the minutes are sent out quickly so that those who attended the meeting still have a fairly clear idea of what was discussed so that they can check that it is as per what was discussed. Effective meetings will ensure also that your management committee members will probably come back, because if they're coming to meetings that go for 2 and 3 hours at a time where nothing is really being achieved, then your ability to maintain them is probably severely diminished. So one of the things I always stress to organisations is have a look at your meeting minutes and have a look at your meeting structure and make sure that everything is in place. So, and starting right from the agenda through to having the chairperson, and once again, it's traditional that the president is the chairperson, but that's not a rule. That's just what it's always been. However, if the president, that's not their forte, then maybe it could be somebody else who runs the meetings and chairs the meetings. It could be the vice president. The president shall chair the meeting. That's usually what's written in the Constitution. That's fine. He can open it, and then he can say, "I'll have the vice president take on the agenda and go from there." So it's about being able to move and generate and operate within your parameters and making sure that key skills are utilised. And then you've got effective meetings, means everyone's a lot happier, means that everybody's more likely to come back. Succession planning. I don't know how many clubs have thought about what are we going to do when, Bill retires, what are we going to do when Marjorie retires, steps down from their various role. So succession planning deals with that, so that there's a smooth transition, various roles, responsibilities, security and information transferred from one committee or a volunteer to another, allows the ongoing operations and forward planning of the club to continue. Now, there are numerous options open to generate improved succession planning. One of the things that I come across quite often is where clubs or organisations have their AGM, and the forms aren't there for the change of the signatories to the bank accounts, the Office of Fair Trading return, those types of things. So then the people who've been in the positions of responsibility, they're like, well, we'll see you later. We're heading off. We've got the caravan packed and we're heading off around Australia. So, and that's the last you see of them. And so for 3 months, you're unable to pay an account, those types of things. So it's about making sure that you can foresee these types of things, put things in place, but also about how you transition from one committee member to another. Now, there are various thoughts about how this can happen. Some thoughts are that some organisations have amended their constitutions. So they now have a system where there's a 50-50 split across their management committee. So that effectively means that their management committee serve 2-year roles. And so that means that at any given AGM, only 50% of the current management committee step down. That means that you have improved succession planning because you always have at least 50% of your committee still there. So those are the types of things that can help to improve your succession planning. The other one is also about how do you manage to disseminate and hand over information. So quite often is the case where people are using personal emails. So these are the types of things that organisations need to be aware of. Should we create a system of club-generated emails so that it's just a matter of handing over a password? Some organisations are going to the stage now where they're handing over laptops. So the dissemination of information is simple as, well, here we go. Here's a laptop from the secretary to the new secretary. Here's the password to get you in. Here's the password to access the email account. And then they step them through it. So here are all your documents, here are the folders, here are the minutes, and so on and so forth. And so these are the types of things that organisations are now looking at, because what this does, it makes it easier for transitioning from one volunteer to another instead of the old, well, how did you get the gig? Well, I don't know, I was just there. And how did you settle into the role? They just said, here, go for it. So succession planning is very, very important to ensure that clubs are maintaining their mode of operations while they're still transitioning over from one committee to another. So basically, it's a bit like the old duck analogy where the duck's swimming quite serenely on top, but underneath it's all going a bit crazy because you're transitioning into a new committee. But, you know, there are some thoughts and some suggestions, and as I will mention at the end, for those clubs who are looking at various bits of management strategies, I am available for further mentoring support through to the 30th of June. So please feel free to contact me to discuss any of these. As I said, I can't provide every solution, and I don't attempt to. What I can do is be a sounding board for some thoughts and suggestions and help organisations to transition into these and provide that support. Financial stability in regards to management. So obviously having a stable, financially capable organisation is able to efficiently allocate resources while assessing and managing financial risks to the organisation. It's achieved through preparing and implementing annual budgets and cash flow projections. Now, budgets, cash flow projections, they are different. So your budget is basically what you'll earn and what you'll spend in a given year, and the cash flow is when you'll earn it and when you'll spend it. So some clubs or organisations, they get a fistful of money. Maybe it's been a really good event or something, and then suddenly, yeah, let's go and buy that new boat. And then before they know it, even though they knew the toilet block was about ready to fall down, it does fall down, and then they have no funds to pay for it. So cash flows and budgets are very, very important, and all organisations should have them, because all organisations should have at their monthly management meetings, and as part of an effective meeting, a monthly P&L, which tells the club where it is financially and what it's got coming up that it has to pay, or where it's going to earn some money from. Now, linked into your financial stability are some other things, and which touch across into our next one, which is risk management. Now, financial stability and risk management do sort of intertwine, because in regards to risk management, that's about identifying things such as the useful lifespan of your infrastructure, your equipment, and making sure that you're able to replace them when and if needed. So obviously, dialing back to financial stability, that's about making sure that there are adequate sinking funds put in place, that budgets are always there, allocating funds to these particular areas. And someone asked me the question about, well, what if you're not making any money anyway? You know, how are you supposed to put money aside if you're a not-for-profit organisation and you're not really making any money? Some of the recommendations that you could take is that you could put the membership fees up, but when you put the membership fees up, people often say, well, why are the membership fees going up? And you go, well, because they always go up, and they always go up by about $10. But if you are able to then say, well, look, they're going up because we're going to need 20 grand in 2 years' time to replace the mower, and so with we've calculated with our 100 members that we'll need to put up the membership by $20 or $10 each year for the next 2 years to cover this off. So that's why the fees are going up. So it's all about always being clear and transparent, which leads across to improved governance. And the fundamentals of governance is about being clear and transparent. So if you're able to take things to a management meeting and to an AGM, and you can explain to your members exactly what's going on, then they may not like it, but generally they'll agree with it and they'll vote it off. Okay, so risk management, and we talked about risk management. So risk management is identifying and managing risks across all areas of an organisation. It's crucial to minimising the threat. Okay, so risk management is both internal and external. Risk management internal, it's about having the proper policies and procedures to protect your members and all of those who attend your particular facility for an event, for whatever it may be. This is in relation to such things as codes of conduct. And someone asked me, well, how do you have codes of conduct for people who just come along to watch? Well, you have a spectator's code of conduct. And they said, well, you've got 300 people there. How do you do that? Well, you don't have to give them out individually, but you should put them in strategic places where people, a reasonable person would see that, such as the amenities, the canteen, the grandstand seating, if you have that in your organisation, just areas where people will see it and they'll go, okay, understand here, this is acceptable, that's not acceptable. And that should be across all areas of operations of your club. Codes of conduct from your management committee right down to your members, competitors, coaches, officials, and those types of things. And that, so having appropriate codes of conduct should be a no-brainer. You should have them in your organisation, and you should have your members well aware of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in today's socially diverse environment. And that, so we're talking about exclusive areas across risk management. So exclusive is those areas out there that potentially can provide harm. So out on, when you run your events, obviously there's a checklist supplied by WWF that goes off, and you check that there's no crocs in your river or whatever it might be. But also about checking your equipment. So if you're running a jump, that the jump is suitable for use, and those types of things. But linked to your risk management, and by the way, every organisation that's running an event should be doing some type of risk management assessment on their facility and on the event to ensure that they've taken reasonable steps to provide a safe environment for everyone to enjoy the event, whether that's on land, on the water, and that type of thing. So one of the things that risk management deals with is also about clubs doing facility management audits. So risk management is about identifying risks across your establishment. Some of those might be that you've identified that you've got asbestos in the old amenities building. So in your facility audit, it might be the highest priority that you need to upgrade your amenities building because of asbestos. And so suddenly you have documents. So when you're looking at potential things like funding applications or something like that, all of these types of documents all come into play a very, very important part of your application, from your strategic plan about where you're going to having your financials and your budgets, through to having your risk management, internal, external, all taken care of, through to having facility audits so that you know exactly the reason why you're particularly prioritising that particular funding application for that particular piece of infrastructure. So volunteer roles and position descriptions. Okay, so as mentioned in the surveys, we did have a good response that there were volunteer roles and position descriptions out there. It's just about the implementation of them. So when we're talking about creating a list of volunteer roles and which need to be filled and from there developing a position description outlining the time needed, the skills required, the training provided, and the dates of events, one of the things that you need to look at is trying to fit a round peg into a round hole. So when you're doing that, it's important that when you start looking at these volunteer roles and these position descriptions, about the type of person that will go into your role. So it's no good having someone who is great at doing meeting agendas and meetings and answering emails and all that, but horrible at finances as your treasurer, and someone who's great with balancing the books, but, has no idea what a meeting agenda is. So, getting horses for courses and putting the right people. And so as you work through all of the various roles, understanding about the type of person that you want to have. Now, people say quite often about, well, we just don't have enough volunteers, and it always ends up being the same people. And one of the things is that if you have really good position descriptions and volunteer roles, then you're able to attract, recruit, and retain volunteers in many various roles. Also, what you're able to do is you're able to look outside of your own organisation. And one of the things that you can do is there are a lot of organisations out there that provide volunteer support and actual people who want to volunteer and help out. So organisations need to start looking externally rather than trying to fill something internally and not getting the type of experience and the type of knowledge needed for that particular role. So once again, if you go back to understanding that your particular organisation, even though you are running a sport as an activity, you are still a business, then taking a business approach of how do we actually fill this role. So whether it's a secretary's role and you're a big club and or a big organisation, and so you've taken the step to go, well, okay, then we believe that financially it's time to put some casual or part-time bookkeeper / administrator to help us manage our organisation. So all of these bits and pieces come into setting you up to move forward, so that when it comes time to recruiting your volunteers, then it's a lot better and a lot easier, because you have very specific job descriptions, very specific roles, and you're able to actually source and secure the right person. And so as following up from the earlier survey, so there we go. So it's probably the #1 role that if you can get it filled right, you will not solve all of your volunteer recruitment problems, but you'll be able to address them a lot better, and that is having a volunteer coordinator. And one of the things that we did do on the roadshow was that we had those attending fill out a volunteer roles and position descriptions. We worked through from the volunteer coordinator. So one of the things that will be happening is that this information will be disseminated down onto the QWWF website, and from there it will be available for everybody to use. But it is important that clubs start to recognise that having a volunteer coordinator is probably a good thing. And we're going to finish off this evening by talking about events and memberships. So both events and membership require a great deal of time to manage and deliver. The constant chasing up the fees, etc., is a source of aggravation while also being time consuming. Events need to be carefully planned and an event template created that is able to be used again and again. Okay, so one of the things is that if you're not currently operating a calendar of events, then as a suggestion, start to look at creating one. That way then, and it's not just a calendar of events of things that are happening on the water, things that are happening within the club. So whether it's your annual Christmas party or it's, you know, Anzac Day, those types of things, you should all have them in your events calendar. Now, membership's an interesting one, because as it currently stands, in order to compete, you have to be a full member of WWF, and then you know, you then join the club. But not many clubs have an allowance within their constitution that allows for a social membership. And it is one of the things moving forward that hopefully we can address in the governance section of the webinar 4 that we present, in regards to clubs looking at upgrading their constitutions to allow for a social membership, so you can capture those coming along to your events who may not be an actual member, but would like to be involved or would like knowledge about your events and what's happening around the club, and then you can put them on your email database. So very important. Now that concludes our webinar for this evening. So I'm just going to quickly open up and have a look if there are. So if anyone has any questions or on that, please let me know, and I will try and answer them as best I can. Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for giving up your time this evening. I hope it's been worthwhile, and look forward to seeing you all again next week for webinar session number 3, which will focus in on admin. It'll be a very quick and a very well, it'll be a lot shorter than this evening's one. and it won't be so in depth. There's quite a lot to cover tonight. I hope that it has provided you with some thoughts. And please, as I mentioned earlier, if you need to discuss or would like any feedback or would like to talk about some of the mentoring available, my email address is up on the screen, andre@prosportinternational.com.au, and my mobile 0408 735 691. So please don't hesitate to contact me. In saying that, I thank you for your attendance and look forward to seeing you all again next week. Night, everyone.